which you probably don't because this is my first YouTube video. So let me introduce myself a little bit. I am a computer science student and my major is artificial intelligence and data science. So I thought I would share some tips as a sensei or senpai or whatever, as a almost master in computer science. I would like to make this first video more informative, if you will, and I thought I would share some of my study tips. I know there are billions of videos like this sharing study tips, and you probably watch these when you don't want to study or you have the motivation but you don't know how. This video is for you, and I wish I knew these tips when I started at uni. But let's start with a small disclaimer. I am not straight A student, but my grades improve a lot since I'm applying these two methods. And my boyfriend's actually almost a straight A student, so I kinda observed him in his natural habitat. Tip number 1. Really try to understand the concepts. This is very important in courses like math or computer science, but not only in these. Really try to sit down, for example, with a friend and try to understand the concepts together, explain it to each other. But if you find this distracting, then try to find different materials, something more interactive like YouTube videos or some different materials. And I know you sometimes can't find the materials you're studying somewhere else, and then you're like, why am I learning this? This is nowhere else. It's made up by my faculty and I will never use it again. Then I think it's a good idea to ask your professor, for example, for some additional materials or for some consultation hour. They should be there for you. Don't forget about it. And you might be asking, why is it so important? Well, since high school I was kind of used to just memorize the stuff, learn it by heart, and wrote down what I remember. But this might be a problem, especially because the courses are kind of sequential. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, in Eastern Europe we have this thing called final exam, which is this exam from every course you had. And if you don't understand the concepts, it will haunt you there. And I might make a video about this final exam and how it destroyed my life. But let's talk about something more positive, shall we? So one example for understanding these concepts could be learning derivations. So instead of learning the formulas by heart, you can learn the geometrical principle. Or in matrix calculus, it helped me to understand that matrices are not just some random table full of numbers, but that they represent linear transformation of a space. And then even the concepts like determinant were much clearer to me and made more sense. So always ask the question, why this works, how it works, what are some of the examples, for example, even from real life, where I can apply this, and it will be much easier to understand and remember. I know this tip might be a little bit obvious, but it wasn't for me. Don't memorize. And the tip number 2 is to really test your knowledge. This is something I was never doing, and it was a big mistake because I always reread the materials, or I try to understand them even. But then at the exam I didn't know half of the questions because when I was learning I couldn't know I don't know these things, right? There are several tools like Anki or Quizlet, but I find it kind of pointless to just rewrite the materials all over again. And I know you can remember a lot by just writing, but sometimes you can think about something else or whatever. So I would share 3 methods where you don't have to rewrite everything down. The first one is what my boyfriend does, and that's that he is explaining the concepts or the ideas to some virtual class. So he's giving this imaginative lecture. He walks and talks at the same time, and that's the reason why we can't study in the same room, because I need this almost vacuum atmosphere to really concentrate. What he does and it works for him, then he can check the actual presentation and see what he missed. But because, for example, I like to study in the library and you can't speak out loud in the library, I like to use the second method, which is that I go through the slides and I kind of write down the most important headlines, and then I test myself on these headlines. And you can also write some additional questions like what it means, what are the categories, etc. Then I have this little anchor and I always know what is the presentation about. And listen, this could be also a bit cheating, because then you don't need to memorize the headlines, right? So then it's a good idea to go all over it again without the headlines and see if you really understand them. And the third method is something I did last semester for my statistics exam, and that was that I really wrote down everything I remember from the slides. And then you can compare the presentation with what you wrote down and see what you missed, what you didn't know, what you forget. This way I could also test if I know and understand the formulas and then compare what I wrote with the presentation. This is all I have for you today. I hope you find some of these tips helpful. Thank you everyone who watched till the end. I really appreciate it. I enjoyed creating this first video and I hope there will be more to come. I'm here for this journey even though I have a lot to learn. So thank you again and see you. Bye!